Hey, welcome back. In this episode, we're going to take our first steps to convert our static HTML page into a Laravel application. Now, because we were given the static HTML, we have the design, we have what it's going to look like. That really falls into the realm of what Laravel will call a view. Laravel uses an MVC architecture, a model view controller architecture. And so we're going to start at the view level and start to back into a number of these different Blade components. In this video, we're going to start by introducing Blade. It's important that we have a common understanding before we get into some of the Blade details. So at a high level, Blade is a templating engine. A templating engine is a popular concept. A number of different languages have them. For example, JavaScript has EJS, Laravel has what we call Blade. And what we're going to see is that the Blade template really consists of two parts. It combines markup with PHP. So it's going to have both our HTML code and our PHP code all in one file. So I did provide a couple of links to the documentation. Here's the documentation on views, and it talks about views in general. And then right under it, there's this documentation on Blade templates. We're going to cover some Blade fundamentals, but if you really want to dive deep, I would suggest that you come to this Blade templates documentation. But let's go back to our slides. And fundamentally, we should understand how this thing works under the hood. We are going to have what we call these Blade templates. They're going to end in the .blade.php extension. We've seen this already. And then it's going to contain Blade syntax. And it's going to look like, for example, this when you want to emit a variable, or you can have if statements or for each statements. And Blade supports a lot of other commands also. So you take a look at the documentation for the variety of what's available. Once a Blade template is defined, Laravel will compile that to PHP. And if you've written PHP apps where you're going to emit HTML, you've seen this kind of markup. We'll take a look at an example of that in a moment. But this compiled version is stored in our storage/framework/views directory. And then when you run code that wants to emit that view, Laravel is going to combine your variables that you feed into it. It's going to run that script and it's going to generate the HTML output. So let's take a quick look at an example. Here's an example Blade template. And this file is called survey.blade.php. It's not our survey template that we have so far, but it's just an example. And you can see that it combines HTML with Blade syntax. And so here's a Blade syntax where it's going to emit the value of that variable. And then it carries on with some more HTML until you get to another Blade directive, which is right here. That for each is a Blade directive. And that's similar to a for each statement in PHP. And we're going to loop over each of these sections and we're going to emit more markup. And that markup is a combination of HTML plus more Blade syntax. And the final markup will be what we want to emit to the browser. Now Laravel does take this Blade template and it compiles it to a PHP file like we discussed. That might look something like this in this case. These are going to be stored in the storage/framework/views. It's going to have a big old hash in front of it. But now you start to see familiar PHP. So it took our Blade syntax and it emitted into this PHP tag. And then it took our Blade syntax here and emitted PHP. Now, if you're interested in how this works under the hood, I have a pragmatic PHP series. And in one of the videos towards the end, video number 29, Blade/twig syntax, you can see me discussing exactly this situation. So let's see if we can find that. So at around 32 seconds, you can see that here I have some code that's just plain PHP, and I am going to convert it to the Blade syntax. And then throughout this video, I'm going to discuss how under the hood, what Blade does. It uses an eval method to convert that Blade syntax into something that's PHP. I'm not going to get into those details. If you want to watch that, you can see that there. So let's go back to our slides. Now that Laravel has compiled our Blade template, it now needs to run it. We already seen how we can create a route and execute a view. That code looks something like this. We have this /survey route. Down here, I have this view method, and it's going to take the short name for the Blade. So I'm not going to put the full name in here, survey.blade.php. I can just put the short name in here, which is survey. If it's in a directory, maybe it's in a surveys directory, and it's going to be a survey.blade.php inside that surveys directory. Then I could use a short name like surveys.survey. But in this case, we're just using the survey Blade template. And then here you can see I'm providing an array that has the data that our template's going to need. So if you recall, it needs a survey title and sections, and you can see that back here. Here's the survey title, here's the sections. And so between the declaration of the route and returning the view, I'm just setting up the data models. So I'm grabbing whatever the survey title is in the sections here. I'm creating it just dynamically in line. Normally this would be a database query, and I'm providing that data to our view. So that's the foundations of how Blade works. Now, there are some concepts in Blade that we want to understand. The first one is we're going to talk about something called partials. Now, what a partial is, it's a Blade template, but it just allows you to take some of that common markup and place it in a file, and then you can reuse it in a number of places. So it's a way to structure and organize our code, and it just eliminates that repeated code. So as an example, here is a Blade template. This is going to be, for example, in our resources/views/layouts. It's going to be part of a layout. We'll talk about layouts in a moment. And then I have a convention where I like to prefix my partial names with an underscore so that it just visually indicates to me that this is a partial. So this is an underscore footer partial. And then here's the content for the footer. Now this isn't a lot of content, but I don't want to have these 3 lines of code on all the different pages. I want one place where this content exists, and if I ever have to change the content, then I got a single place to go change it. And then how I can use this partial is in any Blade template that needs it, I can include, that's the Blade syntax, that partial. As I discussed earlier, this partial is in the layouts directory. So the short name to access this Blade template is layouts._footer. Now, speaking of layouts, we do need to have a layout in our application. A layout really consists of that markup that's going to be on every single page. Now in Laravel, you can nest your layout. So you may have like an application level layout that contains maybe the header, the top nav, and a footer, and then the body content. But then you may have a number of pages that extend that layout and add a sidebar. So you can have nested layouts to accomplish that. But we're going to keep it simple in our slides here. Here's an example of a layout. So this is going to be in our layout/app.blade.php file. And you can see this consists of markup followed by some Blade syntax. Here I'm including a partial called _head. And then we have more markup. And then we have a new Blade syntax called yield. Now what yield does is it establishes a section. And this is really going to be a variable at some point. And whatever content that is associated with this section is going to get emitted in place of this yield. And then below that, you can see I'm including another partial, an _footer. And then I have this @stack Blade directive. And this Blade directive is called scripts. And this is labeled stack because it behaves just like a stack in programming. I'm going to place items on this stack, and anything that I put in that stack is going to get emitted. And I can put multiple things on that stack. So once you've created your layout, then you can have views that extend that layout. So here I'm extending the layout that I just created, and now I'm defining data that can go into these different sections. So for example, here's my yield content section. That section is defined right here. I have a section opening tag and an end section tag. And in between, I'm defining the markup for that section. This is going to get emitted here at the yield statement that you can see above. You can also see I'm using our script stack, and I'm pushing scripts onto that stack, and they will get emitted just before the closing body tag. So at this point, enough talk. It's time to roll up our sleeves and let's make some code changes. We're going to go visit our application, and we are going to do these steps today in this video. So the first thing is we're going to create an app layout. So let's do that next. So I'm going to come back over to my development environment, and I'm going to open up my resources and my views directory. Right now you can see my survey view. This is what we built the last time, mostly just drug it over from our static HTML and we dropped it in place here. Here in my views directory, I'm going to create a new directory called layouts. And this is where all my layouts are going to go. And in here, I am going to create a new app.blade.php layout. So what should go in here? So the easiest way to do this is you go back to the page you're going to create this layout for, and you start to think about at a high level, what's the markup that's going to be on every single page? So for example, is this doc type going to be on every single page? Yes, it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a lot of this upper markup here. We're going to scroll down a little bit, and I'm going to grab everything from, let's say for now, to my body tag right here. And I'm going to get rid of it from here. So we're going to exit out. We've just deleted it. And I'm going to paste it over into my template. So now my app.blade template has all of that. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom. And let's see what's on the bottom of this. I know I have some closing tags down here. And let's just grab this for now. This isn't where we're going to end up because we do need to make some changes here. But now I've got a Blade template. Now I have an opening body tag and a closing body tag. And right here, this is where I want to yield my content. And I get caught by this a lot. I like to put semicolons after all my PHP statements, but this is really a blade statement, and so get that out of there. So this is my first attempt at my layout. So if I were going to come back to my server, let's see, it's already running. So I'm going to go back on over to here. I'm going to open up a browser tab at localhost. My server's at 8,000 and we're looking at the survey. I'm going to see that this page is now broken. In fact, what I'm seeing is the markup that's part of my page, but I'm not really getting any of the header content, which is where my CSS is loaded. So let's go back and let's fix that now. So in my survey, I need to include at the very top an @extends directive, and I'm going to extend the layouts.app layout. And then I need to surround my content by a section, and this is going to be my content section. And at the very bottom, I'm going to end that content. And at this point, I want to make sure that PHP Storm, I have a certain feature on that I like to use. And let's drag this over here so you can see where it's at. But on save, I can have PHP Storm reformat the code, optimize the imports, and rearrange code. I like to put those all on. So I'm going to apply this, and I'm going to come and make a change, and then I'm just going to save it one more time. And you see how it automatically indented everything for me? So I like that feature a lot in PHP Storm. Make that a little smaller there. Okay. So at this point, I've got my survey using my app blade template. So let's come back and let's refresh this page. And you can see that my survey now is functioning again. So we're using that new layout template. Now we're not done yet. Let's go back over here. And for now, let's focus in on our layout page. So I have a mix of content right now in here. There is some content that is going to be on every single page. And then there's some page specific content. So I want to refactor out that page specific content first. And mostly I'm talking about this script here. This script is specific to my survey blade. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this script tag, and it ends all the way down, let's see, here, and I'm going to remove it from my template. So that cleans my template up quite a bit. I'm going to come back over to my survey blade, and down here at the very bottom, let's use our stack. And we're going to drop that script inside of this stack. So now I have this script tag that's being pushed onto my script stack. I want to make sure that's part of my layout, which right now it's not. Let's go down here and let's add a stack called scripts. And we'll put a default in here of just empty. And I almost put my semicolon there. And I'll refresh this page. Let's go on over here. Let's make sure this still works. And I see everything functioning here. I'm getting this indication, but let's just make sure, for example, the required field, this is not highlighted yet. But when I select it, it enables that button. That's all part of that script. So let's come back over to my layout one more time over here. Just like we have a scripts stack, at the very top in the header, I do like to have a styles stack. So if I ever want to have a page that I'm just modifying the styles on that particular page, I can use that stack for that. Now at this point, we're probably okay here with this layout, but I want to demonstrate using a partial. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to make a new file here, and it's going to be a head.blade.php partial, and I'm going to take the content that's in my head tag right here, and we're going to put it over here in this partial. So we're going to remove it from here, and then we're going to use the include directive to include layouts dash head like that. Let's save. Let's go back over to our page and make sure this still functions, and we're still okay here. So I know that that head partial is being loaded. So if we look at the head partial, it does have a title here, and this really should be dynamic with every single page. So let's take this, let's make another yield statement, and we're going to yield maybe a page title here, and we'll have a default as this. Let's save this, and I'm going to refresh my page. And so you can see the page title is up here now. It says survey apps and then wizard mockup. But now on my page, my individual pages, I can have another section here, maybe at the very top, where I can say section page title, and I could say my new title, and I'm going to save. Let's come back on over, and you can see it's already been refreshed and I have my new title. So now I can dynamically control what that title is. Let's go back on over here. I think that this header is looking okay. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And I also think that my layout page here is very minimal, but there's content that's in my survey blade that doesn't really belong as part of that page. And as an example, this theme button at the very top, this really feels like this is part of maybe a top nav layer, and it's going to be on every single page. So for now, let's go ahead and create a partial for this. I'm going to make it, and we're just going to call it nav. And I'm going to get it out of my survey blade. We'll put it over into this nav. And so we've removed it from survey. That's no longer going to be up here in my page. I need to add it back into my template now. So at the very top here after the body tag, we're going to include that nav. Save, I come back over, and now I got my theme button back here where I can toggle between dark mode and light mode. And I don't think we're quite done yet. Let's come back, look at our survey blade here. I have this main tag, and if I close this out, and this has all the content for this survey blade. If I scroll to the bottom of main, at the very bottom, I see this footer. I don't think I want to include this footer as part of every single page. It feels like it should be part of my app layout. So we need to do a little bit of refactoring here. So let's scroll back up here. I have this header, which definitely feels like it's part of the survey. And then I start to get into my step indicator and then my form here. And my form is really all my survey content. So as a first tab, I want to just go ahead and grab this main tag. And let's move it over to our layout. It's going to go right here. And we're going to close main down here. And then let's see, I can get rid of this bottom main tag. I don't need that anymore. And I should be able to pull this footer then in. I can take it out of here and let's put it over into this main tag wrapper like that. Now, I don't think we're going to quite work yet here. Let's go ahead and see what we see. Now visually it looks like we've nailed this, but we have a challenge here because this container, this main container is really setting this width for this survey. And it's really a special width just for this survey content. You can imagine later on we have dashboards. I don't want them to be this wide. I want them maybe to fill most of the page. So let's go back on over here. I want to take a look at this main. We're going to copy this. And I'm going to paste it back into here. And I'm going to put the closing main tag back in. Now, right now, I have two main tags. I know that's going to be a bit weird. So let's make this a div. All right, so now what I have is I have this div container that has all of my content for my survey. But I duplicated it and I have this main container here that it's surrounded in. Now I should be able to tweeze apart those styles and have this footer that's part of the main content. And it's not part of my page content all the time. So let's think about what we need here and what we don't need here. So first of all, this main container, I think I want to go keep it full width. I don't need this. These colors, I don't think I need those here. Rounded, this part of the style for my survey. Same thing with that. This padding of 8 may cause us problems later on, but let's go ahead and keep it at this main level for now. And transition colors and duration 300, that's probably okay at this higher level. Although I already see transition colors up here and duration 300. Maybe we don't need it at all. Maybe it's just duplicate. Let's go ahead and just get rid of it. Okay, so I've really trimmed down my main. So let's take a quick look and just see what our survey looks like at this point. Now I have it all looking like this and it's over to the left. So before it was centered here, so we can fix that in just a moment. Let's come back to our survey blade and take care of that right away. We can just add a margin auto. That'll center it left and right. So now we've popped it back into the middle. Let's see what else I might need to remove. I think that these are all part of the global, so I can remove those. Let's see what we get here. So if I refresh this page, I think we're okay. All right, but now I have my footer, which is at the bottom of the page. That's going to be on every single page. It's not part of my page template, but it's part of my layout template, which is down here. So I've accomplished what I need to accomplish. I've refactored out this main wrapper. Now I have this survey.blade template that is just the content for my survey questions. So it has a wrapper, it has a header for the survey, it has the step indicator for the survey, and then it has the form for all the survey. Okay, so if we just take one last look here, this is all working. I think we're okay to check this in. And let's go ahead and get to our Get tab here. Let's see our differences. So I added new layouts. I made some changes to my survey blade. So we will add that, make a comment. So this is really all a video. 3 changes. Let's push those. And let's not forget our tag. And we can push our tags up. All right, so let's come back on over to our slides now. So we've accomplished all these code changes. I did already do this. I committed it and I tagged it. And so that's going to wrap up this video. Up next, we're going to introduce the Blade concept of components. Components are reusable pieces of code that can have data associated with them and logic associated with them. And this is going to become very handy when we start to emit questions. So far, I have a single question for every question type, but I really want to take those question types and make those components. So we'll do that next time. We'll see you then.